Welcome to Down to Earth Astrology and Primal Girl Wellness. This is Ms. Jenny and I am your astrologer. Today's video is about Rishi Sunak, the newly appointed Prime Minister for the UK, who has been appointed in the middle of absolute chaos over there. So it will be very interesting to see how this plays out astrologically as well as in real life. So this video will include an examination of Mr. Sunak's natal birth chart, his natal chart, the time of the official appointment as the new prime minister, which gives us something to work with in terms of a blueprint for how the career, or rather the job's going to go for him. And also both of these charts as they connect to the UK national chart and examination of the UK as an entity unto itself. Now, along with this video, at the end, for fun, I'm including a little section on palmistry because there's a fairly good picture of Mr. Sunak with his hand up and visible, his palm visible, taken by a journalist. So we're going to use that, as best we can to do a little palmistry with a couple of guest appearances. So we have something to compare the palmistry to. And that's it. So a couple caveats before we get started. The first thing is I have to say that this video is for entertainment purposes only. Take everything I say with a grain of salt, not take it as gospel. And, as with all things, use your own best judgment when it comes to coming to determinations in your life. So there's that. There's reasons I'm saying that. I'm just saying, got to put that out there. The second thing is literally as I read to you and talk to you about these charts, I am looking at these charts with brand new eyes at the same time that you are. I've only had enough time to go in and collect these charts and put them in my PowerPoint and take a quick glance at them. I have not had a chance to do meaningful analysis. So I will be doing deeper examination and analysis literally on the fly as I am showing you on the PowerPoint. So forgive me if I miss anything that comes out in the future or whatever. I'm literally doing this off the cuff as I'm talking, so I might miss a few things that would be more obvious if I had spent, 3 days poring over these charts. And cough, cough, cough. And the final thing, well, that's pretty much it. We are all in the throes of major evolutionary change. We are on the precipice of great, great change that involves the power structures that basically have been the scaffolding and design of our societies, multiple societies, for a long time now, modern civilization, and all the power structures that have held it up are in the process of great revision and very Plutonian reform. So we're all feeling it. Boy, oh boy, we're all feeling it. And you in the UK are certainly not, any less exempt. Here in the US, we seem to be a little less subject to the buffets and blows of these things, but we've got our own homegrown crazy people shooting innocent people and children in mass, shooting children in mass. This is what we have over here instead. So I don't know that we're necessarily doing any better. Okay, so let's take a look at Mr. Rishi Sunak and let's see what the stars have to tell us. Alrighty, so this is the natal chart for Rishi Sunak, born May 12th, 1980 in Southampton, England. Now, we don't actually have a birth time for him. I'm going with an 11:01 p.m. time, doing a really fast and loose rectification. And the reason I'm going with 11:01 is for a couple of reasons, just eyeballing the chart. So the first thing is on the day he was born, from midnight to midnight, the moon travels from 16 Aries all the way down to 0 Taurus. Now, that means that his moon could potentially be in Taurus if he's born late in the evening on that day. I think he was born at 11:01 p.m. because one of the things that this is going to do is it's going to give us the moon in Taurus as well as Sagittarius rising. With Sagittarius rising, it's going to make Jupiter right here his chart ruler. Now, Jupiter is conjunct Mars, and it is in the sign Virgo. So Jupiter, or let me back up a little bit. Sagittarius rising is typically going to give you a very friendly, a long stride, very friendly personality, long stride, really long, loose kind of gait, right? Also, with a heavy Virgo emphasis, and in this particular case, it'd be his chart ruler, Jupiter being in Virgo, you're going to get somebody who's very lean and typically very small boned or small framed. And this is a great picture over here that shows that classic Virgo frame, very bird-like, right? And also very long. And in a lot of the pictures, you'll see those classic Jupiterian or Sagittarian laugh lines and the big horse mouth, which isn't to say that it looks like a horse, but it is to say that typically with Jupiter strong in the chart or Sag rising, you get somebody who has a really big, nice smile, right? And it's very quick and easy to smile. So we should see a lot of that. And this technically also, with Mars Jupiter conjunct, Jupiter being his chart ruler and Mars with them, we should also have somebody who is actually athletic. So I'd be very surprised if he was not athletic in his youth, although not necessarily in team sports. It'd be much more precision-oriented sports rather than rough and tumble kind of things, or rough and tumble just to rough and rugby would not be his thing. Much like cricket, I suppose, would be a more likely the game. Very precision-oriented sports would have been his thing. And cycling also would come up a lot with that. So there's that. And with Neptune on the ascendant, Neptune gets such a bad rap, right? So with Neptune on the ascendant, what that also is going to do is one of two things. Typically, it gives us either extremely large extremities, big feet, big hands, big noses, big ears, which apparently he has. He's got that King Charles ear thing going on. But also Neptune or Pisces rising will give you big, watery, deep bloopers, like eyes you could just swim in. And he definitely has that. So he's a bit of a cutie patootie, I hate to say it, but I like those little nervous, nerdy Virgo guys. So what can you do, right? Now, with that said, the other things that were notable about this chart, and the other reason I'm going to kind of stay with the idea of 1101 or 11-ish being his birth time, is that's also going to put Pluto right there on his midhaven at the top of his chart. Pluto on the midhaven, anytime you have outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto on angles or with personal planets, but especially on the angles in your natal chart, there are circumstances and things in your life that are going to be completely out of your control. There are things in this life you're going to be called to do or participate in that you have no choice in the matter over. It's fate. Fate steps in and says, we have a job for you. There's no way to prepare for it. There's no way to deny it. There's no way to, jump in early for it. It comes for you when it comes, and ready or not, you're now going to be a figurehead or a symbol or an operative for this particular thing, represented by the cycle of time, the location you're at, and the things that the planet represents. With Pluto on the midhaven, and also too, you need to know about Pluto. Pluto is a very quiet planet. Remember, this is Scorpio's planet. They don't come in with a big drum roll and a parade. They come in quietly, like fog, just kind of, circling in, and before you know it, you're consumed by it. So Pluto is a very quiet planet when it operates, and it takes a long time for it to be obvious what has happened. By then, it's too late. So with Plutonian themes in a person's chart, oftentimes there are things happening that we just can't see. We just can't see, and we're not going to see them because, well, we're being called for a special mission, and when it's time, we'll be tapped on the shoulder. Pluto also has a lot to do with reforms. So in this lifetime, we would expect, because the 10th house is the house of career and public standing, that he would be deeply involved in some type of reform or reforming of something as part of his work. Now, he could have easily gone into something like forensic psychology. He could have gone on to be, any type of forensic, pick an occupation, right? Or he could have gone on to be a criminal kingpin. He could have been anything that had to do with Plutonian themes. But up until this point, he's lived a very quiet, mostly modest, not particularly exciting life, which is also very Pluto, because now he is about to become the instrumental linchpin in transforming and reforming a lot of what the UK is dealing with, and that he has been chosen for. Now, how well this goes or how easily this goes is another matter entirely. At a quick glance at the charts earlier this morning, for a really chance to get into it, it really looks like he will end up being one of the most hated people in the UK before this is over. So I wouldn't wish this job on anybody. All right, so there's that. Now, with this chart, one of the other things you may be noticing is that Neptune right there on the top of that chart, right? And worse, it's squaring Saturn in the ninth. So Neptune is retrograde and Saturn is retrograde. They are square each other, and they are coming out of the first and ninth house. I understand, or my understanding is that he is of the. Actually, that's not true. I don't know what faith he belongs to, but he is of some particular faith that is specific to his ethnicity, I suppose. Not his nationality. His nationality is British, but his ethnicity is something else. But with these planets retrograde, especially with Neptune angular retrograde, I would not be surprised if he considers himself a bit of an atheist or an agnostic, one of these people who absolutely firmly puts logic and reason and science before religion and faith and superstition, which isn't to say that he doesn't have a tremendous amount of faith or sense of spiritual duty, but he may not necessarily see it or recognize it as something that needs to be part of an organized religion. So there may be a bit of pushback inside himself in terms of religion and the role religion plays in his life and the lives of other people. Which isn't to say that he's against religion, but it is to say that he's not going, here's what I'm trying to say, he's not going to be driven by spiritual rules that are given to him by other people. He'll be, if anything, when it comes to his motivations, his spiritual motivations, they will absolutely be deeply held convictions about what is true and right in a spiritual sense, not necessarily bound to the Haydn convention of specific religious discipline. So that's good. Now, he is a Taurus. He's got the Sun and Mercury together in Taurus, and that Taurus is making a nice trine to Saturn in Virgo, which makes him a very mostly commonsensical kind of person. He's very pragmatic, very realistic in his visions. Now, here's what's interesting. What keeps him from being a stick in the mud and kind of mired in the dirt like a tree growing roots in the ground that can never make any progress or move forward is this beautiful Uranus opposition to that Sun, Mercury, and Taurus. Now remember, Sun, Mercury, or Taurus by itself tends to be really plodding and thorough and slow, and they're not, rarely do you ever find them, involved in cutting edge or risk-taking things. That is not their nature. With Uranus, they're involved with that opposition and that Sun, Mercury, it gives the necessary kick in the pants or jolt of lightning, that little surge of excitement and fearlessness necessary to take calculated risks. Now, of course, the question is, are these calculated risks a good thing? Well, he's not broke, and he's not, in debtor's prison because of gambling debts. So I'm going to say it's okay. I'm not sure what his history is. Somebody said, I think he worked at some point with Goldman Sachs, which is a financial organization. I don't know I think it's a bank. I don't know. So there's the possibility, you would think with this particular combination, that there would be some involvement in stocks or stock trading, but clearly that's not the direction he went. So, the question becomes, with all of this pragmatic, realistic kind of thinking and focus on, the needs of life, the necessaries, how well supported would his risk-taking be? Well, the good news is that Sun-Mercury-Uranus opposition sets up a sextile trine to Saturn. So when we talk about calculated risks, they really are very, very calculated risks, and they're almost always, nobody's infallible, but they're almost always on target. So we don't have to worry about him being somebody who takes a lot of unnecessary, insane calculated risks. Also, too, understand that with Neptune and Saturn square, with Neptune on the angle like that, he has so much internal fear and anxiety about getting things wrong. He's a perfectionist to the hyper anxious degree. So for him to make a calculated risk and then act on it. He will have double checked it, triple checked it, quadruple checked it, like 100 times checked it over, and then had experts come in and check it again, and then gone back and audited their work. He's not one to just jump in and do stuff without being 3,000% sure that this is absolutely the way it should go, barring an act of God. Well, considering what the UK is in the middle of right now, I'm okay with that. This is okay. This is the kind of thinking I would feel better with if I were living over there. And of course, now the question becomes, even with that said, does that necessarily mean that he's going to act in the best interest of the populace as opposed to the elitists? Well, there's a question, isn't it? And I don't know that we're going to see that in the chart. What I can tell you looking at this chart is that with this chart ruler here, Jupiter conjunct Mars, right, making a beautiful sextile to Venus in Cancer and making a trine to the moon in Taurus, I would say that this is somebody who is absolutely focused on the necessaries in life. So food, shelter, and clothing. Anything and everything that he does should absolutely be focused and driven by the idea that everyone should and needs to have access to resources that allow them to have food, shelter, and clothing. Now, how that plays out and how he defines that is a whole other conversation, because I'm not going to lie to you, when you've got all this Virgo, you tend to get somebody who's a little bit stingy, just a little bit stingy. These people are not free and generous with their money. And also, too, the way he handles his resources, personal resources, would be, if this is the right time-ish, right, give or take, if he does in fact have Sag rising in Capricorn in the second house, Saturn rules his second house, and Saturn is in Virgo, and it's retrograde. He's cheap. He's just cheap. Jesus, I thought Jeff Bezos was bad. He's not as bad as Jeff Bezos, because Jeff Bezos is a selfish, self-aggrandizing little bridge troll who does not care how much he hurts people. Rishi, on the other hand, at least appears to actually care about not hurting people, and certainly having a very deep love, respect, and appreciation for motherhood and women. So we stand a chance with this one, so hang in there. So that's what we have for this. So let's take a look at the next chart. Okay, so this is on the left, and here we have the birth chart, or the chart for the nation of the United Kingdom. On the right, we have Rishi Sunak's chart. We have his appointment as the PM, the chart for that. And in the very middle, we have Great Britain. So we've got a tri-wheel or a three-ring chart here with Great Britain as the center that everything else is kind of following around. Now, the first thing that came out at me, because I have some concerns about this, and I think a lot of people do too, because, there's something wrong when Boris Johnson decides not to keep pushing forward to get his old job back, because he is who he is. So when he's bowing out, there's something not right. So the thing with Rishi is that Rishi carries a Saturn-Neptune square with Neptune on the angle if we have the close to the rectified time of birth. But he's got a Saturn-Neptune square right here. Saturn and Neptune typically indicates scapegoating. It's unfortunate, but it's true. There are other things in a chart that can show scapegoating, where someone literally finds himself in a position where they're being used as a scapegoat over and over and over again in different scenarios. In Rishi's chart, he carries Saturn and Neptune square, which means the propensity to be scapegoated in his lifetime is very high, and this may not be a new experience for him. We don't know his personal history, and I doubt that's something he's really going to be readily willing to talk about to the public. However, separate from that, here's the thing though, right? When we set up the chart for his appointment as the PM and the UK chart with his natal, now it really kind of comes together as a picture, because here in the middle ring is all of this is the planets for his appointment. This is his natal Saturn and his natal Neptune, right? So his natal Saturn is opposing the Neptune in the appointment chart as PM. And because he already carries his own Saturn and Neptune in square, we now have a T-square involving Saturn and Neptune between the charts. So this is now made worse by Mercury in the chart of Great Britain being active in this, really active in this T-square. So right here indicates we've got some problems. We've got some big problems here. The big problems in Little Chinatown. Okay, so right off the top of my head, because again, I'm literally looking at this chart and examining it as I'm talking to you. So we know that Mercury in the UK chart rules Great Britain's 9th house of international affairs, as well as 12th house of things happening behind the scenes, hospitals, charity, fraud. The 12th house is a whole lot of stuff, right? And Mercury for the UK rules both of them, and Mercury sits right here as the leg of this T-square. So if Mr. Sunak is going to get scapegoated for anything, I would bet you good money that a lot of it's going to have to do, one, it really is going to be scapegoating because the 12th house is involved, but also it's going to have to do with things that involve foreign affairs, foreign relations, foreign investments, as well as a whole lot of dirt from behind the scenes that gets drug up and drug out just to make a point of things. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I think he's being set up. Like Liz Truss was literally a seat warmer. She was put in because she was just, Jesus, she's dumber than a freaking doorknob, and she would do what she was told. That's why she was given the job. Rishi Sunak, with that Sun Mercury opposing Uranus in Taurus Scorpio, he's not stupid. He's sharp. He is sharp like a razor. So there's a lot of horsepower going on underneath that hood. He's not somebody that's so easily, led along, as it were, strung along. So he's going to be a lot harder to manage, but they still need a fall person. Whoever is pulling these strings needs somebody to take the fall to protect everybody else. And I think, unfortunately, this is part of why Rishi is put into this position, or at least that's why they think. Now, remember, he carries Pluto at the top of his chart if we have the right time of birth. And that means that a lot of what's going on, including this appointment, means that he is fated to be here. This is unfortunately a necessary part of his path in this lifetime, is to take this role and act it out in this play, as it were. But we don't really care about that so much right now. What we really want to know is, will he be able to do his job in a way that helps the United Kingdom's economy and keeps them afloat and out of trouble, right? So let's take a look at the chart for the United Kingdom. Here's what I thought was interesting when I looked at this chart. So the chart ruler, because you guys are Libra rising, your chart ruler is both Venus and Saturn, because Saturn is the original ruler of Libra, or it's a co-ruler of Libra. It's exalted in Libra. Okay, so in many ways, Capricorn, Jesus, the UK seems to be very, very entrenched in a very Saturnine identity, right? So Saturn in Leo is very much about image and doing the right thing and presenting the right part, manners, protocol, stiff upper lip, all that sort of stuff. Whereas Venus in Aquarius is much more metropolitan, much more diverse, much more tech-focused. So with Venus as your ruler of your chart, the UK should be much more progressive than we've seen it be, which is kind of interesting, right? So I would have expected, if I were looking at a nation's chart, if they had Venus in Aquarius ruling it, or as their ruler, that this would be the land of the giant melting pot, where national identity is based on your national identity, not your ethnicity or your race. And also a huge hub in a spoke, or the spoke in a wheel, right? The center of a wheel, where many, many diverse things and people and commerce, like it's a transit center for everything globally. And you may very well be. So if I'm wrong or I'm not understanding it, please explain it to me, because I don't live there. So I don't know that much about the nation. But that's certainly what Venus and Aquarius ruling the chart would tell us, that Great Britain is intended to be the forefront, the figurehead of progress and progressiveness, which is not necessarily how the rest of the world sees it, or at least not from down here. And you guys carry, and also see there's that Saturn, right? And you guys carry the moon in Cancer. There's a deep love of tradition and family and hierarchies, and the past and your roots, your family lines. It's great stuff. And with Saturn in Leo, there is some self-consciousness, always feeling like you have to prove yourself as bigger and better, right? And needing to live up to a very high standard of integrity, at least in the public-facing way. And with Saturn squaring that Neptune, it can be a little daunting. It can be a little daunting because also, too, that Venus, which is the chart ruler, this all sets up a T-square. So Venus and Saturn in opposition, setting up a T-square to Neptune, ruling the chart of England. There's always a little weirdness with you guys. That's interesting. There's always a little weirdness as far as your identity goes. So it's almost as if your identity is a little fluid or subject to change at a moment's notice without anyone really understanding what the real boundaries and stuff are. Maybe that's what all the border wars are between you guys in Ireland or something. I don't know. You'll have to explain it to me like I'm 6, because I don't understand. Now, with the UK chart, remember that moon is in Cancer, deep, deep love of tradition and family and hierarchy and lineage, right? And the sun is angular. It's on the 4th house cusp. So there's a tremendous pride in who you are and your history and all those things that make the national identity what it is. With the sun-moon opposition, because it's a full moon there, it also makes you very, very visible on a global scale. And indeed, you have been for a long time. The British Empire was the Western Empire, right? So that was pretty interesting. Now, you may wonder, like, what the hell's going on, right? Because everyone's kind of going hell in a handbasket across the world. So we know right now Pluto is at 27 Capricorn. So Pluto has been in opposition to the moon for a long time. At the same time right now, Damocles, and we're going to talk about Damocles in another video. Damocles, or the sword of Damocles, right? That thing's hanging by a fine hair, right? Sword hanging in your head by a fine horsehair. Damocles is at 25-ish Aquarius, and it is opposing your Saturn, your country's Saturn. So Saturn, here real quick, Saturn rules that 4th house of the nation and the home and the roots, right? Damocles is over here, opposing that. And Pluto is here, and it's been opposing your moon. So at this particular juncture in history, when it comes to the nation, Great Britain has been and continues to be under a tremendous amount of strain and stress as it tries to find its place in a new world, which means that major, massive reformation and overhaul of the old way of doing things, of the old structures, has to happen, or you perish, which would be anybody in that situation. So that's kind of what you guys are going through right now. And like everywhere else in the world, people in positions where they benefit from the old way of doing things are not trying to give any of that up. And that's really where a lot of this problem is coming from. So let's take a look at Rishi's relationship to the UK, as well as his new position as Prime Minister and his relationship to the UK. So in Great Britain, the first thing is you guys have a beautiful Sun-Mars trine right out of the 4th house, going into the 8th of resources and investments. So the real estate, I don't know what that's about, but it would appear that Great Britain has tremendous wealth tied up with real estate, and certainly investments into real estate or people investing into real estate. But that's right there is like 3,000% of your wealth, which is interesting and good because you can't manufacture land. So And this is what we have here with Great Britain standing on its own. So we would look for also too anything that involves the second house of resources for the country, right? Which in this case is going to be Mars and Pluto. And so we have Mars here, we just found that, trining the sun. And we have Pluto over here at 2 Pisces. So now with Pluto in 2 Pisces in the 5th house, this suggests a couple of things. If I'm not mistaken, the 5th house rules gambling, stocks, and speculative investments, which are not going to be great for Great Britain in terms of their economy. So taking financial risks like that is not, I wouldn't recommend it, but I wouldn't recommend it for anybody. But for the UK in particular, this could be poisonous. So the stocks and speculative investments, those are big, dicey propositions that could lead to long-term damage if they're not careful. Okay, so, but Mars and Pluto, this is what rules your second house of resources, because we've got Scorpio sitting right there. So how does the new PM line up or connect to the resources for the UK? Well, let's take a look. So the middle wheel out here, right, the middle wheel is going to be our new prime minister. So the sun, Jesus, do we have anything? We don't really have, I don't like this. I don't like this at all. We don't really have a whole lot of connections happening here in terms of great big, amazing support systems for improving the resources for the UK. What we are seeing is, that's not good, Jesus. He seems like such a nice guy. He really wanted this to work. But again, I could be wrong, so take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt. So what we are seeing, however, right here, and maybe not even him so much, although I would probably use it. So as the new prime minister, right, the Uranus for that chart is really the only thing that's connecting with Mars, so, and the North Node. So what that suggests is that the new prime minister, whether it was him or anybody else that took on this position on this day at this time, would be sending shock waves through the economy and the economic system as a result of doing their job. Now, the Uranus, and it's the North Node, and the North Node is closer to Mars. So the problem with the North Node and the South Node is that they're, the head and the tail of the dragon, they're never satisfied. They're constantly consuming. So with the North Node Uranus, I would expect a couple of things. One, I would expect the new PM, in this case Rishi, to be very heavily focused on technologies and trying to bring the country forward and ahead in time, like trying to be ahead of its time sort of thing in terms of progress where technologies are concerned and the things that are related to that, right? AI, robotics, all this sort of stuff. The problem is that with Uranus and the North Node conjuncting the Mars for the country, because Mars is in Taurus, and the nation of Great Britain does not like moving fast. They like things going in a specific order and at a reasonable pace. They're not about shock. And Uranus and North Node indicates that there will be a lot of shock and certainly unexpected, fast-moving changes that will affect the populace. That is definitely going to upset a lot of stuff. Like, that's not anything anybody's going to be happy with. Because at the same time, look at this. It's also going to be, see, look at this, Jesus. It's also going to be involving the Neptune in the second house of Great Britain. So there's a whole lot of, I want to say mystery meat, like spam is mystery meat, or potted meat is mystery meat. Sorry, I'm going off on a tangent. There's a lot of obvious but not obvious things in terms of resources and finances for the nation of Great Britain that people are not aware of, or at least the public, the masses are not aware of. There's some stuff hidden in there that goes way, way back. It's just a given, especially with this Mars-Neptune opposition here, right? It's just a given that we just don't talk about that. We don't talk about it. It's not open for discussion. Don't look that way. Pretend you didn't see it. No, no, no. It's not what you think it is. Look away. Look away. Pay no attention to the little man behind the curtain. So there's that. But the problem is the new PM and specifically Rishi, then the two together, it's like a double whammy here. This is absolutely going to throw open the curtains wide freaking open and let all kinds of light in and expose. And that's not a word anybody wants to hear. It's going to expose a lot of the secret or unspoken things about the resources and the finances of the country that nobody was allowed to talk about or look at or acknowledge. We're just going to pretend that's not happening. That doesn't exist. Look away. And he is guaranteed in his role as PM to expose all of this, either deliberately or unwittingly. But whoa, man, stuff is coming, falling out of that closet, and people are not going to be happy about this. So there's that part. Yay, team. I don't know who's going to get hit by this, but boy, it's going to be quite the it's going to be quite the adventure. Okay, so there's that. Now, the other part of this, of course, is Pluto, right? So is anything making, because that's not the happiest news in the world, is anything making good aspects to Pluto? Well, in his role as PM, luckily, we are seeing that Sun Venus making a trine to Pluto. So in his role as PM, he will be able to effect major transformative changes for the better. And it will be coming from a place of love. It may not seem like that at the time, because I'm telling you, he's really going to get scapegoated for all this. But it's coming from a place of love, and it will ultimately be beneficial in the long run. But in the short term, there's a whole lot of noise happening, a lot of panic. That's going to occur with it. But this right here, the PM, the new PM, bearing down on the second house, because these are all economics, right? Financial reforms. Trining Pluto, which rules that second house, promises us that the changes will ultimately be beneficial in the long run. And that's what you need. It doesn't do any good to eat today and then starve for the next 6 months. Better to eat less than you would like to now, but know that you're going to be able to eat later and your children will be able to be fed. So that's kind of where that's at. Now, here's some of the not so great news, as if we didn't have enough of it. All right, so some of the reasons he may be the most hated person in the UK before this is over. First things first, in his role as the PM, his Saturn, or the Prime Minister Saturn, will be bearing down on that Venus in the chart of the United Kingdom, which means that because Venus rules our pleasures and pastimes, Saturn is the taskmaster who takes things away. So the word austerity has been coming up a lot these last couple of weeks, and it will absolutely, unfortunately, be put into place as part of his reforms and solutions as PM. And I know nobody on the planet wanted to hear that. All right, and to make this even more challenging, because, who doesn't love a good challenge, right? His Mars and Jupiter, remember, Jupiter, we think, is his chart ruler. That Mars-Jupiter is going to be opposing Pluto for the United Kingdom, which suggests that, again, he is going to bring with him in the role of Prime Minister massive change, transformation, and reformation, whether he's doing it consciously and deliberately or accidentally, wrong place, wrong time. You're a catalyst, for big change because now people hate you because you did everything wrong. Because we just had one of those in our government. Okay, so that is what it's bringing with it. So you guys are going to go through massive, massive change, transformation, and reformation in terms of your finances and your economy. It will end well. It will end well. But I will tell you right now that austerity, this awful damn word they keep talking about, because as if you couldn't tighten your belts any tighter, right? It's coming down the pike. So do the best you can to prepare. Okay, now some things that I thought were notable about these charts combined is his Rishi's chart. Remember, his Pluto we think is on the midheaven. In the appointment of Prime Minister, Mercury and the moon are conjunct Pluto, which makes this a very tight connection between him and the job. He is meant to be here. He is meant to do this job. And God forbid he does end up being scapegoated, even being the scapegoat for a lot of stuff, like Liz Truss was. That was meant to happen as well, which is not anything anybody wanted to hear either. So, is that necessarily a good thing or a bad thing? Well, I don't know. I don't know. What I can tell you, this is what I was looking at, right? The moon for the United Kingdom, right, which represents the populace and the masses, will be squaring this moon, Mercury, Pluto little bundle over here with Rishi and his new job as prime minister. He is going to be one of the most hated people in the United Kingdom before this is over. And that is quite unfortunate. There is a possibility that he could get through this and be redeemed later, but man, I would not wish this job and what he's walking into on anybody. Not anybody. So there's that. Also, too, some interesting things, right? His natal Venus is at 0 Cancer. The Uranus for the Great Britain is at 1 Libra, and again, it's a square, so he's not loved. He's not loved for weird reasons. He's going to come off as a bit of a weirdo, which is pretty funny coming from Great Britain. But there's something about him that's going to mark him as an outsider in ways that go far beyond his appearance. Like there's a lot of things about him that will make him be unable to shake the label of being an outsider, not a foreigner, an outsider. And that's going to be a problem, especially considering he's going to need all the help and support he can get from the people around him in, I guess, your cabinet, your parliament, however that works. And he may not necessarily be getting support like that either. Because again, I honestly believe that what he has walked into is, well, he's going to affect some major dramatic changes for the better, and transformation and reformation will occur as a byproduct of the things that need to happen to break up this impasse you guys are finding yourself in, and chaos. Unfortunately, at the same time, I think what comes with that package is him being held or used as a scapegoat in the process before this is all over. So, well, there's a mouthful right there. Okay, so this will be the end of part 1. This is going to be a 2-part video. In the next part, we're actually going to do some palmistry, which I think you guys will enjoy a lot. So you can tell a lot by hand, but because this is getting kind of lengthy here, I have to split this video up into 2 parts. So let me finish here. So the 2 charts that we're looking at, on the one side, over here, this is the appointment as PM. And on this side, this is Rishi's personal birth chart. The thing about it is when you take a job, like it can literally on paper, it can seem like the most perfect job in the world for you. It could be seen like a perfect fit, like it was made just for you. And then you start the job and it becomes hell, just freaking living hell. So it's not enough that a job looks good as much as the job has to resonate with who we are. And certainly the cycle that we're walking into also has to be a good fit, because sometimes it can't be the perfect job for you if it were any other time and place. So right now we're going to take a quick look at how being the prime minister impacts him on a personal level, and if this is a good fit for him or if this is going to be a really awkward fit, meaning he's in over his head, as it were. And given the little bits that I know about what's going on over there with the economy, I imagine this would be over pretty much anybody's head at this point. Okay, so over here, what we have is the chart for the appointment as PM with his planets on the outside. We know that the moon that day runs anywhere from 16 Aries at midnight starting the day to 0 Taurus at midnight ending the day. I think he's born closer to midnight with the moon in Taurus. But again, take your own advisement. And certainly you can work without that time, just use the solar planets. So if if I have my times correct, there are a couple of things happening here. So the first thing is we know that Mars is making its station. Mars is coming to a standstill right now at 2526 Gemini, and he carries Venus at 29 Gemini. So Mars is going to, Mars in the PM chart absolutely sitting dead on his Venus and making a lot of presence there known. I'm sorry, with the 1101 chart, it's actually 0 Cancer is his Venus, not 29 Gemini. Still close though. So we know Mars is over here in his 7th house at 25 Gemini, making a standstill. And what that would suggest, because these charts are almost identical, right? What that would suggest is that he's going to have many critics, and they will be open and vocal critics. He'll know exactly who is having a problem with him and why they're having a problem, because they will not hesitate to be very vocal and very loud about it. So that's not anything we wanted to know about. That's definitely not on my list of things that I would look forward to in a job. Let's change this to something smaller. Mars 25 Gemini. Yeah, that's a problem. Okay, now we also know we've got this new moon eclipse. He took this job under the new moon eclipse. So eclipses are about fated events. I'm telling you, he was meant to be here to take this job because he's meant to be part of a process that makes major changes to the fundamental structures of the government and the economy and the finances and the culture of Great Britain. Whether he knowingly is doing this or he just happens to be in the wrong place at the wrong time and is a catalyst for it, he was meant to be there and this was meant to happen. So that sun moon, that's that new moon eclipse, right, at 1 and 2 Scorpio is here. And if we have the right chart, I'm so sorry. That means that this new moon eclipse pulls in his moon, which also pulls in his 8th house. So his finances are absolutely going to be under the gun, and whatever his finances represent are also going to be part of, well, part of the reasons he's criticized, part of the problem, and part of the solution, right? Something about his finances. And I think I just read he married a billionaire's daughter, who apparently there's some issues with tax evasion. So this hit the marital finances, because remember the 8th house is also marital or shared finances, your marital finances. So that right there is going to be a big part of where things are going to have to be made, changes are going to have to be made, and they may be used as an example. Oh man, I really wouldn't wish this on anybody. I certainly don't want this job. Now, Saturn is also another big one right now, Saturn and Uranus. So Saturn right now is at 18. Uranus is at 17 Taurus over here. And we know we have Damocles, which I'm going to talk about in another video, the sword of Damocles over here. So Saturn is in its 2nd house. Believe it or not, I don't know how this works, but Saturn in his 2nd house, ruling his 2nd house as his job as the PM, with also Saturn being in the 2nd house of his position of PM, is seriously going to retard his ability to make money or cause financial losses. So he's going to lose money or lose the ability to make money as a result of taking this job. That should be interesting. Who knew, right? As this is happening by transit, Pluto has been bearing down on his 2nd house of finances anyway. So his personal finances were literally up for revision anyway, and with a very real possibility that he could end up financially gutted as Pluto crosses over this degree. Oh, sweet Jesus, I'm so happy I'm not him. Now, Saturn and Uranus have been in square aspect forever. It seems like they're never going to get away from each other. They're driving us all crazy. Saturn at 18 is still squaring his sun Mercury, right? So Uranus is there on top of that as well. So Saturn, which rules his second house, and certainly is very important in terms of his role as PM, is squaring his Sun, Mercury, and Uranus, all this cluster in the fifth house, which means the speculative investments, again, are going to be an issue, right? I don't know what kind of, like, we've got an issue here in the United States with our senators, you know, making their money through stocks and insider trading. This has been going on for 20 years. They had a long report about it a long time ago. I remember being a teenager watching this on the news, or in my early 20s. And it's just been going on and on and on for decades, and people just kind of fell asleep at the wheel and let it happen. And now it's back up again, and we're seeing why this is a problem. And it may be the same thing for you guys with, you know, stocks and investments and insider trading. In any event, if that is the case and he's involved in that, he is about to get his ass handed to him. Oh my God, because he will be symbolic of something beyond himself. He will be literally a symbol, or as he is also a part of the problem. Whew, Lord, would not want that job for nothing. Okay. Oh, also, forgot. Remember we talked about Mars making that station right now in that seventh house and him having a lot of critics and people challenging him? Well, Chuchi Pie, look at that. If we have the right time of birth, it's definitely opposing his Neptune, but if we have the right time of birth, it's opposing his Neptune right there on the angle on the ascendant and involving his Saturn, because he carries that Saturn-Neptune square right there on the angles. This promises, I'm telling you, man, this kid's going to get scapegoated in a big way. So what this suggests is that when he gets hammered, because Venus is there as well, this is going to have everything to do with finances and financial fraud. And Mars and Gemini, like duplicate records, right? Mars and Gemini, Neptune and Saturn, opposition with Saturn and Virgo, retrograde. He's going to miss something. He would have been, because he's very careful about these things. It's not his nature to miss things, but something is going to come up in the details. It's going to open up a whole big can of worms, and he is going to get nailed for this. But again, he represents a symbol of bigger problems, right? There's much more going on here than just him. And he will be the poster child of things that you don't do. So he may end up being a catalyst, and that's why he's going to get scapegoated. Now, Mercury in the chart for the appointment of the PM is also conjuncting, if we have the right time of birth, that Pluto Midheaven conjunction, which again has everything to do with documentation. Mercury is in Libra. This has to do with partnerships. And again, this goes back to the wife. And it's pulling in that transiting Mars in that seventh house. So there's a whole lot of people who've got a lot to say, and none of it's very good. The problem is all of this is setting up a grand trine in air with Saturn. So it may be very difficult to make anything stick. It doesn't mean that he won't suffer for it, but it may be difficult to send him to jail for that, as it were. So I don't know that this job is going to be the best job in the world. I think he could have had a much easier, nicer, simpler, lucrative life if he had just not done this. But, buddy boy, it's too late now. And, you know, I will say this, in the event that you actually manage to pull something off that saves the country, you know, from complete ruin and disaster, unlike those, you know, party boy puppets that were in office prior to you, you may be able to redeem yourself and climb out of this hole before it's over. But boy, you've got a rough road to climb to get there. Jeez Louise. So this has been part one of two parts for Rishi Sunak, the new PM for Great Britain. In the next video, we're going to do palmistry and looking at his hands, see what the hands can tell us. It's kind of interesting. So the upshot so far, based on what the stars are telling us, we are looking at, unfortunately, a period of austerity for the UK. It's going to be an unfortunate and necessary thing. We are looking at Rishi Sunak being instrumental in major reforms and changes in the finances and economics of the country. Whether he does this deliberately with literally genius plans, or he does this accidentally because he becomes the scapegoat, and whatever nonsense he's been involved with, or more specifically his wife, or the two of them, and that comes to light, and that forces changes. That could be it as well. This is not going to be an easy time. He is an important and instrumental player in this untangling of things in the UK, because you guys are literally going through major evolutionary change. You're going to be okay. The end result are some major beneficial long-term changes that will benefit everyone, including your children and grandchildren. But between here and there, man, everybody's got a bumpy ride ahead of them, and quite the exciting one. So stay tuned for part 2, and we'll see you in a minute. Oh, and if you like this, make sure you like, subscribe, and share so you get notification. Like, to let me know you liked it, subscribe so you get notification, and share it with somebody that you think might enjoy this. See you soon.